airports. Tyler Bond hated them. They were a necessary evil in his line of work, but he hated them. They damaged his marriage. They were filled with hordes of people waiting to be airlifted to their destination, treated like cattle. In fact, today everything was 10 times better than what usually happened to him. Maybe he should reconsider his attitude on this matter and just accept that this is the way it is and that he is well paid to put up with it. 10 years ago, he had to stand in line to check in, then stand in line at security, then stand in line to board the plane, where he had to stand in line again, waiting for those in front to stow their carry-on luggage into the upper compartments while he slowly makes his way to the back of the plane. Now he didn't have to talk to anyone if he didn't want to. With his own experience and that of other avid travelers, he never checked luggage again because he only took a moderate amount of stuff with him. Participation in the frequent flyer program has dramatically reduced wait times at security at most airports. Years of flying across the country once a month, plus another shorter flight every month, had elevated his status with his favorite airlines to the point where he usually no longer had to sit in the back of the plane and could sit right behind the first-class passengers. His credit card even gave him lounge access, which was pretty good at the Miami airport. But even though it felt much better today, he still didn't usually enjoy it. Today, however, in the waiting room, Veronica, an attractive middle-aged woman who looked several years younger than him, wearing a frilly dress with a plunging neckline, partially covered by a cardigan when she wanted, was chatting with him about her recent flight experiences. Towards the end of the conversation, she let the cardigan cover her cleavage less. He, too, willingly and openly shared his stories of traveling to dangerous places, and, at the end of their conversation, she handed him a business card. He quickly glanced at the card, not wanting to take his eyes off Veronica, and discovered that she was also from Denver, which led to several more minutes of conversation. Instead of taking his flight, she had one more stop to make before returning home, probably for the better. After a pleasant chat, they parted ways, walking towards their exits. Did she flirt with him? Maybe. Probably even. He wished he had found out while they were talking. Decades of marriage had dulled his sense of flirtation. Crap. Not that anything would or could arise from this. He had been 100% faithful throughout his 26 years of marriage and had no intention of changing a thing. This was one of his cross-country trips, and despite his dislike of airports, he was in a decent mood due to the earlier conversation in the lounge and some success on the trip that would pave the way for an extra bonus next quarter. He had just boarded his plane into a larger economy-class seat to return home when his phone rang. He was just about to put it into flight mode when this happened. It was his wife, Rebecca. It was too early in Denver for her to be awake, much less calling. Given the hour of the morning, he wondered if it was important. Maybe. His finger hovered over the phone to answer, but then he turned it off. If it were one of his children, he would of course answer. But whatever this grumpy woman, his wife, wanted could wait. He admitted that the journey that began 10 years ago, although limited in scope, had not been easy for them and should not have caused so much controversy. He was rarely away more than 6 nights a month, but he realized that this was becoming too much. He wishes his wife was more understanding. When he told her years ago about a new position and an increase in salary and benefits, his wife practically pushed him out the door, and then she welcomed him and his money with open arms. Now, despite his attempts to woo her and spend more time with her, she has become distant. Recently, his boss told him that if he accepted a new position that required more travel, he could earn even more money. He did not mention this proposal to his wife. It wouldn't do any good. The whole situation saddened him, but he still had children who were fantastic. He loved his children. His daughter Jamie had just started pharmacy school in the fall, and his son Mike, like his father, was working hard to take summer courses to get a head start in his first year of engineering. Both parents were expectedly proud. He missed participating in their events and missed their formation. He assumed Rebecca did too, since she seemed sad lately. Whatever their current problems, They raised two exceptional children, smart, funny, hardworking, selfless, humorous. They have been praised often over the years. He would like to see them more often. Since the children now have their own apartments nearby, he was thinking about trading this huge house for a smaller one. But Rebecca didn't want to hear about it. In addition to serving as one of the hospital's financial executives, she served on several charitable boards, and the home, neighborhood, and neighbors lived up to her image. A little extra maintenance on the house and yard compared to a smaller home was one of the sacrifices Tyler had to make for his wife's social standing. The flight was tiring, as it often happens, or rather, he languished on the long flight. He wasn't in the mood to watch a movie and hadn't gotten much sleep during the trip, so he decided to close his eyes for a few minutes while he could. He was awakened by the plane hitting the ground. He was surprised that he slept almost the entire flight. He turned the phone back on and it looked like something had exploded. Voice messages and text messages from everyone who was close to him. He called his daughter. "Oh my God, Dad. Thank God you called. Jamie, you knew I was on the plane. What's happening? Everyone tried to reach me, but no one told me anything. Well, I'm not going to do either one or the other at the moment. Stop by my place as I'm on my way home. Mike will be here too. Jamie, you can't leave me like this. Are you and your brother okay? Is your mom okay? Is anyone injured? I'm really sorry, Dad. It's just one big mess. No harm done. Well, none of the people we love. I'll explain everything I know when we meet. What the heck?" Tyler drove from Denver International to his daughter's house near the university in record time. He hurriedly knocked on the door, and when he entered, she was almost crying. He saw his son sitting gloomily on one of the chairs. "What's wrong, baby?" "Oh, Dad, we are very sorry. It's a huge mess." Mikey spoke up, more like a nightmare. "Tell me what happened," Jamie continued. "We didn't want this to happen. It just snowballed." "You didn't say what was going to happen?" "Well, we wanted some of this to happen, but not like this." "Honey, you still haven't told me anything." "Speak quickly." Fine. It started about a month ago when you were last in Boston. I was planning to come and visit my mother during lunch, and when I arrived, I saw an unfamiliar Tesla S parked in your place in the garage, which was strange. I didn't recognize the car and didn't know who it could be. From the street, I could see that the lights were on in the house, and by the way the shadows were moving, I noticed that someone was walking through the house towards the garage. I called my mother on her mobile phone, but she didn't answer. I waited a few more minutes and called her again. When she answered, I asked her if she was home, and she said she was still at work and that she would talk to me later. I suspected that this was obviously a lie, so I hung up and looked at the house some more, wondering what to do. After a while, I moved my car out of sight and snuck over to look out the garage window. Mom's car was there, next to the Tesla. I was furious. I returned to my car, called Mike, and told him what I had seen. I wanted to find out who was with my mother. Suppressing my anger, I watched for the first 6 hours, waiting for him to leave, and Mike arrived and watched until he left at 7 o'clock the next morning. Mike followed him to work in a large office building in Cherry Creek and walked in a few minutes later and asked the security guard if he knew the man who had just entered. He told Mike his name, and Mike called me. We didn't know what to do. I called my mom the next morning, annoyed that she hadn't called me back, and I've been cold to her ever since. During our last trip, we saw the same thing, so Mike and I decided that we had to do something about it. Mike intervened. I was with you when you checked the smoke detectors a few weeks ago and saw one in the garage, so I had an idea that we thought was funny at the time. I think it's not so funny now. We were afraid to tell you because we knew you'd want to catch them red-handed and you'd probably kill the bastard and end up killing Mom, either by accident or on purpose, and go to jail. We didn't want this. We wanted to come up with a way to expose them and embarrass them at the same time. I advised Jamie to sneak into the garage around midnight and cause one of those unexpected sparks that are known to happen to electric cars from time to time to create enough smoke to set off the alarm. With smoke detectors in good working order, I didn't think anything would happen other than the fire department showing up. Tyler chimed in. I'm guessing this means you didn't know there was a heat detector in the garage and not a smoke detector? Mike had a look of surprise on his face and exclaimed, "Oh shit, that's why the alarm didn't go off for so long." Tyler shook his head. Jamie chimed in. We thought the arrival of the fire brigade would cause some awkwardness, but it wasn't enough. So I got involved, too. Tyler looked stunned as everything his children told him began to make sense. He asked, "It looks like my marriage has burned to the ground. Is our house still there?" Jamie replied, "What? Oh, yes. Well, almost all of it. Oh my God. I went into the house after my mother left for work, and both times there was one of my mother's 1.5-liter bottles of wine in the trash can. I know she likes to keep the bottles cold most of the time, so this seemed like the perfect opportunity to add to their embarrassment. These days it's actually easy to buy Viagra or its equivalent online, so I ordered it. You know I'm studying to be a pharmacist, and with my degree in chemistry it wasn't hard to turn the pills into a liquid." Tyler gasped. "You didn't do this." "I'm afraid I did. Yesterday afternoon I snuck into the house. I looked in the wine refrigerator, and there my mother put her 1.5-liter bottle in a vertical cell, already opened, plugged, and standing upright. It turned out that there was only about a glass or two missing, so I poured my mixture, swirled the bottle, and carefully replaced it in place, leaving no trace of my presence. We thought that when the fire brigade arrived, they would have to run out of the house naked, and the neighbors would see it, and this would be obvious evidence of their betrayal." Mike came in. "Just before midnight, I climbed through the window in the garage that I had opened the last time I was there. It took a while, but using the car's charging socket and some tools, I was able to create an arc several times. It is enough for the metal around to become hot. I don't know if his car was malfunctioning or what, but suddenly sparks began to rain down. I knew this would set off the fire alarm, or so I thought, and I got out of there as quickly as possible. Apparently more than that happened after I left. I never thought that the battery itself would catch fire. I think this happened because before the fire brigade could get there, not only his car caught fire, but also my mother's. By this point, the alarm system in the house was going crazy so that the whole neighborhood could hear it." Jamie said, "You know how nervous Mom gets when she's upset. It's like her brain is simply disconnected from her body." This is where the story gets interesting. Tyler said, "More interesting than the fact that my wife is cheating on me and that my house burned down?" Jamie chimed in, "We told you it didn't burn." "Oh, cool. Anyway, within the few minutes that I was allowed to talk to my mother this morning, she told me that she jumped out of bed when she heard the alarm. She shook her lover, Eric, but he did not wake up. She knew he drank a lot, but she couldn't wake him up. She thought he was dead and became hysterical. She called 911 from her home phone and started screaming, 'Fire! Call an ambulance!' Then she grabbed him by the ankles and began to drag him out of the bedroom towards the exit, not realizing or thinking that they were both naked. He was too heavy for her to get down the stairs, so she kept dragging him. Again, she didn't think he was face down. Remember how I told you that there was a carpet nail at the entrance to your bedroom that stuck out just enough to snag one of my socks a few months ago when I was visiting you? Well, it looks like either you never scored it or someone else came out. Because you know what? Mom pulled Eric through this area and he must have been quite heavy, or the nail popped out harder and caught him. Not only did the carpet nail cut his groin, but it also cut his stomach and face too. Because the house was dark and he was unconscious, his mother did not realize this and continued to drag him down the stairs. I almost feel sorry for this dude. In addition to his almost 3-foot scratch, which was bleeding profusely, he had a friction burn from the carpet from his groin to his nose, which must have cracked when he landed from the bottom step onto the tile floor in the kitchen. I'm sure dragging across that tile and out of the front door wasn't very pleasant either, especially when his head went over the threshold, hit the concrete porch, and went down the stairs to the sidewalk. It looks like he has abrasions from falling on the asphalt and a nasty wound on his face. Tyler wasn't too upset about it at the time and responded, "And do not talk." Mike took it upon himself to continue the story. The house alarm must have woken up the rest of the neighbors because there seemed to be quite a crowd when the mum dragged her lover, both bare-bottomed, out of the front door in front of everyone. Timothy from across the street even filmed the scene on his phone and sent it to me. Here, look. Tyler couldn't believe what he was seeing. There was a video on Mike's phone of his wife nakedly backing away from the front door of the house. And sure enough, Eric's head cracking on the concrete as he walked down the stairs while Rebecca kept dragging him. Either she was really on adrenaline, or she was stronger than he thought. Immediately after this, an ambulance and a fire brigade arrived. He watched as the fire crew ran into the house to open the garage door and began hosing down everything in the garage and around the house and area. The ambulance attendant walked over to his naked wife, covered her with a blanket, and turned Eric over. To help him medical help. Mike told him, "Did you know that these electric cars send an alert to the owner's phone when something happens to the car?" Apparently, Eric's wife, Francine, received the message and saw her husband's car at someone's house instead of at the airport where he was supposed to be, and came to investigate. As Tyler continued to watch, he saw that Eric could not be revived. He was alive, but unconscious. A gurney was wheeled out of the ambulance, but before he could be strapped in, Francine appeared and flipped it over, sending her husband flying onto the pavement. He'll need more than a few stitches to fix the bleeding and new cut on his head. What a pity. Tyler couldn't remember ever seeing anyone so angry. She landed a few good blows to his groin, continuing to kick until she could be pulled away from him. He was then placed back on the gurney. Rebecca stood stunned as at least a dozen or so of her socially oriented neighbors watched the tragic comedy unfold. Francine turned to Rebecca, but instead of hitting her, she tore off her blanket, leaving Rebecca naked again, at least for a minute, until another blanket was found and she could cover up. Seeing his wife naked in their yard, Tyler thought, "Damn, I'm going to miss her. A shame." When officers arrived, the fire appeared to be contained, except for Eric's car, which was still spitting sparks. Francine, practically foaming at the mouth, screamed at the police to arrest Rebecca. For what? No one knew, but the officer led her, clearly shaken, to the back of the patrol car, just to keep her away from Francine and the onlookers. Jamie said, "We knew that Eric was married to Francine, but we didn't know that she was the daughter of the district attorney." It appears that she or he had enough power that the decision was made to take Mom to the station and keep her in the interrogation room for the rest of the night, wearing only a blanket. She was released around 6 in the morning when she tried to call you, but you did not answer. And some say that God is not merciful. The problem is that since Eric didn't wake up right away, he was checked by a toxicologist, and the only strange thing that came up was traces of Viagra. When his wife heard this, she exploded because he has a heart condition and would never take something like that. At least that's what she said. Paramedics said the fire was fortunate because it meant he got to hospital early enough for them to prevent him from falling into a coma, which could have gotten very bad otherwise. Tyler asked, "Worse than this?" Mike jumped up. "The police brought your mother back to the interview room and returned to your house this morning to try to gather some evidence. But during the fire, the firefighters knocked the bottle and glasses onto the floor, breaking them. With all the water, bottles breaking, and wine leftovers being washed away, there is no clean evidence that can be collected. I went in earlier and the only thing the police found there was a trail of blood going up the steps and out the door. I suspect now they are simply confused. Everyone thinks he took Viagra when he shouldn't have, and without any proof, I'd be surprised if she was delayed for long. They were also able to get the Tesla out of the garage and take it away. Francine was all over the news this morning. It wasn't pretty." Tyler asked, "Where is your mother now?" Jamie replied, "She's still at the police station. They said they would call us when we could pick her up." "I'm so sorry, Dad. We should have just told you instead of trying to get revenge. We were so angry, but we only made a bad situation worse." While his children looked scared, a smile slowly began to spread across Tyler's face. He stood up and said, "I appreciate what you guys tried to do. Is it true? This means a lot to me. Honestly, I don't think you did that bad. All things considered, I think it worked out pretty well. I'm going home. Your mother will need you both. I'll let you two decide who takes her out of the station, but not me." They understood everything. On his way home, Tyler stopped at the bank and transferred half the money from their accounts to a new account in just his name. He will take care of the rest of the finances later, in the evening or tomorrow. He stopped at the local market and picked up some trash bags to take his clothes to the cleaners because he suspected that everything in the house now reeked of smoke. As he approached the house, he could see, but didn't pay much attention to, the damage from the fire. A trail of blood was clearly visible across the porch and down the steps. He smiled. Entering the front door, which was closed but not locked, he saw a trail of blood leading up the stairs. The part of the kitchen leading to the garage looked like a war zone. It's a pity. Paying no more attention to the blood, he went into the master bedroom and put all his clothes into bags to take to the cleaners. His insurance company will receive the bill. He saw that the bed was still dismantled, and this thought saddened him for a moment, but only for a moment. He knew what he was going to do. The obvious starting point was to divorce the bitch, then split up the finances, find an apartment, and take more trips with higher pay, using my free time to visit my children more often and have more fun. He wondered if Mike could forward him the video so he could send it to local news stations. Rebecca volunteer organizations would be so happy to see one of their board members increase her profile. As he loaded the last bag into his car, a police car pulled up. He was asked to show some documents, and he showed them. Having heard about what happened, and perhaps even having been there or seen the video, one of the officers felt uncomfortable, but asked anyway, "Will everything be all right with you?" In a split second, all the events of the day played over and over again in Tyler's head, like one of those old-fashioned wheels people spun on game shows. When the wheel in his head stopped at Veronica's business card, a wide grin appeared on Tyler's face, and he replied, "I'll be fine, officer. I'll be fine." Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.